My name is Riley Dawson. After my startup partner ousted me from our $10 million company, I thought I'd lost everything. Until I used the patent I'd filed first to launch a new venture, secured a $15 million investment, and outpaced the original startup, showing the power of foresight. This is how I turned a setback into a quiet triumph. It all started 6 years ago, in 2019. I was 31, a tech enthusiast with a background in electrical engineering, living in Portland, Oregon. I'd always been fascinated by renewable energy, solar power, wind turbines, anything that could make the world more sustainable. Growing up in a rural part of Oregon, I saw firsthand how unreliable electricity could be. My family lived on a small farm, and power outages were a regular part of life, sometimes lasting days. I remember my mom using candles to cook dinner, my dad struggling to keep the generator running just to keep the fridge on. We weren't poor, but we weren't well off either, and electricity bills were a constant strain. I'd see neighbors, especially single parents or elderly folks, go without power because they couldn't afford repairs or high utility costs. Those memories stuck with me. Even as a kid, I'd sketch ideas for solar panels in my notebook, dreaming of a way to bring affordable, reliable energy to places like my hometown. That dream became my mission. I wanted to create a solar-powered device that could bring consistent energy to rural homes, even in the most remote places, without breaking the bank. After college, I worked as an engineer for a renewable energy firm, learning the ins and outs of solar technology, but I always felt like I was working on someone else's vision. I wanted to build something of my own. In 2019, I had an idea. A compact, portable solar generator called the Solar Core. It could power lights, charge devices, and even run small appliances like a fridge or a fan, all for a fraction of the cost of traditional solar systems. The design was simple but innovative. It used a unique battery storage system I'd developed that maximized energy efficiency, allowing the device to store more power in a smaller unit. I knew it could change lives, but I couldn't do it alone. I needed a business mind to help me navigate the startup world. That's when I teamed up with Ethan Carter, a friend from college. Ethan and I met freshman year at Oregon State University, where we'd bonded over late-night study sessions and weekend hiking trips in the Cascades. He was a business major, charismatic, great with numbers, and always full of big ideas. I was the quiet one, more comfortable with circuits than people, but Ethan made me feel like we could do anything together. I trusted him completely. In 2020, we founded a startup called Green Wave Innovations. I handled the product development, spending hours in my garage soldering circuits, testing solar panels, tweaking the design, while Ethan focused on marketing, pitching to investors, and building our brand. We were a perfect team, or so I thought. We spent 2 years building the Solar Core prototype, often working 16-hour days, fueled by cheap coffee and takeout pizza. Ethan would come over with investor decks, and I'd show him the latest version of the device, explaining how it worked. He'd say things like, "Riley, this is incredible. We're going to make millions, and help people while we're at it." By 2022, we had a working model. It wasn't perfect. It could power a small home for about 12 hours on a single charge, and the battery sometimes overheated, but it was a start. I'll never forget the day we tested it at a rural community center an hour outside Portland. We set up the Solar Core in their main room, and a single mom named Maria, who'd been struggling with high electricity bills, plugged in her fridge. It hummed to life, and her kids clapped, their faces lighting up. Maria hugged me, tears in her eyes, and said, "Riley, this is going to change everything for families like mine. I can't thank you enough." That moment made every late night worth it. I knew we were onto something big, something that could bring light, literally and figuratively, to people who needed it most. But I also knew the tech world could be ruthless. I'd read stories of startups failing because someone stole their idea or a partner took credit for the work. I'd seen it happen to a friend in college who lost his app idea to a bigger company because he didn't protect it. So, before we even had a working prototype, I took a precaution. In 2021, I filed a patent for the Solar Core's core technology, the unique battery storage system that made it so efficient. It wasn't just a standard battery. It used a combination of lithium cells and a custom heat dissipation design I'd spent months perfecting, allowing the device to store more energy without overheating. I filed the patent in my name, not the company's, because I wanted to protect my invention. I didn't tell Ethan. I figured we'd sort out the legal details later, once we were more established. I trusted him, but I'd learned in engineering school to always have a backup plan. I'd stay up late reading about intellectual property law, making sure the patent was airtight. I even paid a lawyer $1,000, money I'd saved from skipping meals out, to review it. She said, "Riley, this patent is solid. You own this technology no matter what happens with the company." I nodded, filed the paperwork, and kept it to myself. That decision would save me. By 2023, Greenwave was taking off. We'd raised $5 million from investors, mostly small venture capital firms who believed in our mission to bring clean energy to underserved communities. Ethan was a natural at pitching. He'd walk into meetings with his $1 million smile, showing off the SolarCore prototype, talking about how we were revolutionizing rural energy access. The tech blogs started writing about us. One headline called the SolarCore a game changer for rural energy, and another dubbed us the startup to watch in green tech. We started getting orders from nonprofits and local governments, and our company was valued at $10 million. Ethan and I were equal partners, each owning 50%, and we hired a small team: 5 engineers, a marketing specialist named Tara, and a sales rep named Carlos. We rented an office space in downtown Portland, a small loft with exposed brick walls and big windows. I'd walk in every morning, see our team working, and think, we're doing this. We're really doing this. But things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Ethan started changing. He'd always been ambitious, but now he was obsessed with growth, at any cost. He'd push me to cut corners on production, saying, "Riley, we can save money if we use cheaper materials. No one will notice." I'd push back. "Ethan, that'll make the SolarCore less reliable. These families are counting on us. We can't let them down." He'd wave me off, saying I was too focused on the details. Then came the real disagreement. Ethan wanted to pivot our focus. He thought we should target high-end urban markets, selling the SolarCore to wealthy homeowners and off-grid enthusiasts who could pay a premium, like $2,000 per unit. He'd say, "Imagine the margins, Riley. We could triple our revenue in a year." I disagreed, sometimes heatedly. I'd say, "Ethan, that's not what we're about. We built this for rural families, for people who can't afford traditional energy solutions. We priced it at $300 for a reason. That's the whole point. If we go after rich customers, we're abandoning our mission." He'd roll his eyes and say, "Riley, you're too idealistic. We're sitting on a gold mine, and you want to give it away for pennies. We need to think bigger, think profits, not charity." We argued for weeks, our once easy friendship turning tense. I'd go home after those arguments, feeling drained, wondering if I was being too stubborn. I thought we'd work it out, we always had before. We'd been through tough times, like when our first prototype failed during a demo, or when an investor backed out at the last minute. We'd always found a way to compromise. But this time, Ethan wasn't budging, and neither was I. One night, after a particularly heated argument, I called my sister Jenna, who'd always been my sounding board. I told her, "Jenna, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Ethan's losing sight of why we started." She said, "Riley, you've put your heart into this. Don't let him take that away. You've always been the one who sees the bigger picture. Trust your gut." Her words gave me strength, but they couldn't prepare me for what came next. One morning I walked into the office, and Ethan called me into a meeting with our lead investor, a guy named Victor who'd put in $2 million. Tara and Carlos were there too, looking uncomfortable. Ethan sat across from me, his face cold, and said, "Riley, you're out. I've convinced the board we need a new direction, And you're holding us back. We've bought out your shares, you're done. I was stunned. My stomach dropped, and I felt the room spin. I looked at Victor, hoping he'd say something, but he just nodded, avoiding my eyes. Tara stared at the table and Carlos whispered, "I'm sorry, Riley." Ethan slid a check across the table. $500,000 for my 50% stake. I said, "Ethan, this is our company. I designed the solar core, every circuit, every panel, every line of code. You can't do this. We built this together." He smirked and said, "I just did. Take the money and go, Riley. You'll thank me later. You're not cut out for this level of business." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I'd poured 3 years of my life into Greenwave. Every ounce of my energy, my savings, my heart. I'd missed my niece's first birthday, skipped hiking trips with friends, worked through weekends and holidays, all for this dream. I'd even taken a pay cut, living on $20,000 a year so we could afford to hire our first engineer. And now I was out. The $500,000 felt like a slap in the face. My share was worth $5 million, but Ethan had manipulated the board, claiming I was unfit to lead because I lacked vision. He'd turned my passion for our mission into a weakness. I took the check, my hands shaking, and walked out. I didn't say goodbye to the team. I couldn't face them. I drove home in a daze, tears blurring my vision, and collapsed on my couch. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the walls, feeling like a failure. I'd lost my company, my dream, and my best friend in one day. I kept replaying Ethan's words, "You're not cut out for this," and wondering if he was right. I'd trusted him, shared every detail of the solar core, even let him take the lead in meetings because I hated public speaking. And he'd turned on me. I didn't know what to do next. For weeks I spiraled. I barely left my apartment, living off the $500,000, eating instant noodles, and sleeping 12 hours a day. I'd wake up, stare at my laptop, and close it again, unable to even look at my old designs. I stopped answering calls. Even Jenna couldn't get through to me. I felt like I'd lost a part of myself. I thought about fighting Ethan legally. Maybe I could sue for my shares, prove I'd been unfairly ousted. But I didn't have the money for a lawyer, and I knew Ethan would drag it out with his charm and connections. I felt powerless, like I'd been erased from my own story. One morning, after a month of wallowing, I was cleaning out my desk drawers, trying to distract myself, when I found the patent paperwork. I'd filed it in 2021 before we even incorporated Greenwave, and it was in my name. The solar core's battery system, the thing that made it so efficient, so affordable, the thing that set it apart from every other solar generator on the market, was legally mine. Ethan didn't know about it. We'd been so focused on building the product, rushing to meet investor deadlines, that I'd never mentioned it, and he'd never asked about intellectual property. He assumed the tech belonged to the company, but he was wrong. That patent was my lifeline, my way back. I sat there, holding the papers, and felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. I remembered Maria's face, the kids clapping, the families we'd promised to help. I couldn't let them down. I couldn't let Ethan's greed stop me from finishing what I'd started. I decided to start over. I took the $500,000 buyout and used it to fund a new venture. I called it Solarize Innovations, a company focused on the same mission: affordable solar energy for rural communities. I reached out to a lawyer I knew from college, a woman named Priya who specialized in patents. We met at a coffee shop and I showed her the patent, explaining what happened with Greenwave. I said, "Priya, I need to know if this can protect me. Can I use this to start again?" She read through the documents, her eyes lighting up, and said, "Riley, this patent is ironclad. The solar core's battery system is yours. They can't use it without your permission. Ethan can try to build around it, but he'll have to redesign everything from scratch. You can build something new and they'll be stuck. You've got the upper hand here." Her words gave me hope, a real, tangible hope I could hold on to. I rented a small workshop, Really just a garage in a friend's backyard in East Portland, with a leaky roof and a flickering light. But it was enough. I started rebuilding the solar core, using my patented technology. I worked alone at first, buying secondhand solar panels from online marketplaces, soldering circuits late into the night, just like I had in the early days with GreenWave. I'd play music to keep myself awake, old rock playlists from college, and lose myself in the work. I improved the design, making it more efficient than ever. The new solar core could now power a home for 18 hours on a single charge, 50% better than the original. And I added a modular feature so users could connect multiple units for larger spaces. I'd test each prototype in the backyard, setting up lights and a small fan, watching the system hum to life under the stars. Those moments reminded me why I'd started this in the first place. I also reached out to a few of the non-profits we'd worked with at GreenWave. One of them, a group called Rural Energy Access, remembered me. Their director, a woman named Aisha, had been one of our first supporters. I called her, nervous, and said, "Aisha, it's Riley from GreenWave. I'm starting over. I've got a new version of the solar core. I know things ended badly with Ethan, but I'd love to work with you again." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Riley, we loved the solar core and we loved working with you. I heard what Ethan did. I'm so sorry. If you've got a new version, we'd love to test it. We've got a project in rural Washington that needs exactly what you're offering." Aisha's group became my first client. They ordered 50 units for a pilot program in rural Washington, distributing them to families in need. The feedback was incredible. Families loved the new solar core. It was cheaper than the original, now priced at $250 per unit, more reliable and easier to use with a simple plug-and-play setup. One farmer wrote to me, "Riley, I can run my water pump with this thing. I don't have to worry about blackouts anymore. You're a lifesaver." Word spread, and soon I had orders from other nonprofits, small towns in Oregon and Idaho, even a few international aid organizations working in South America. I used those early sales to hire a small team, 3 engineers who'd left GreenWave after hearing how Ethan treated me. One of them, a guy named Sam who'd been with us since the beginning, called me the day he quit GreenWave. He said, "Riley, I couldn't stay after what Ethan did to you. I believe in the solar core, in your vision. I want to join you wherever you're going." I also hired a marketing specialist named Leo, a young guy fresh out of college who believed in our mission. He'd grown up in a rural area too, and he'd say, "Riley, I know what it's like to go without power. This is personal for me. I'll make sure the world knows about Solarize." We worked out of that garage for a year, pouring every dollar back into the business. I'd sleep on a cot in the corner some nights, too tired to drive home, waking up to the smell of solder and the sound of rain on the roof. We were a small team, but we were united by a shared goal: to bring light to those who needed it most. Meanwhile, GreenWave started to struggle. Without my patented battery system, their version of the solar core was inefficient, costly to produce with a shorter battery life and barely competitive. Ethan tried to pivot, focusing on the urban market he'd wanted, selling to wealthy homeowners in cities like Seattle and San Francisco. But the high-end customers weren't interested in a subpar product. They wanted reliability, and GreenWave couldn't deliver without my tech. I heard through the grapevine, mostly from Sam, who still had friends at the company, that they were losing clients fast. Non-profits canceled orders, saying the new units kept failing, and their valuation dropped to $3 million within a year. Investors started pulling out, and Ethan was scrambling to keep the company afloat. I didn't gloat. I didn't have time. I was too focused on building Solarize, on keeping my promise to the families we served. In 2024, I pitched to a new group of investors at a renewable energy conference in San Francisco. I was nervous. I'd never been good at public speaking, and Ethan had always taken the lead in our GreenWave pitches. But I prepared for weeks, practicing in front of a mirror, memorizing my slides. I brought a working solar core, set it up on the stage, and showed them how it powered a small lamp and a fan with ease. I showed them the patent proving the technology was mine, and I told my story, the real story. I said, 3 years ago, I co-founded GreenWave to bring affordable energy to rural communities. I designed the solar core from scratch, but my partner ousted me, thinking he could take the company without me. He didn't know I'd patented the core technology. I started Solarize to finish what I started. Not for profit but for impact. We've already helped 500 families, and with your investment we can help millions. One investor, a woman named Claire who ran a green tech fund, was impressed. She came up to me after the pitch, her eyes bright, and said, "Riley, your tech is incredible and your story shows grit. I love that you protected your work. That's the kind of founder I want to back. I'm investing $15 million in Solarize. Let's make this global." I almost dropped the solar core I was holding. I shook her hand, thanked her, and called my sister on the way home, my voice shaking with excitement. Jenna screamed through the phone, "Riley, I knew you could do it. This is your comeback, your real comeback." That $15 million changed everything. I moved Solarize into a proper office, a small space in Portland's tech district, with enough room for a workshop and a meeting room. I hired more engineers, a production manager, and a logistics coordinator to handle shipping. We scaled production, partnering with manufacturers in California to build the solar core at a larger scale without sacrificing quality. We started selling the solar core in 10 countries, focusing on rural communities in places like India, Kenya, and Bolivia. In India, we worked with a non-profit to bring the solar core to villages without grid access. In Kenya, we partnered with schools to power classrooms. In Bolivia, we helped farmers run irrigation pumps. By 2025, we'd sold 100,000 units, generating $30 million in revenue, and our valuation hit $50 million, 5 times what GreenWave had been at its peak. I also started a program to train locals in each region to install and maintain the solar core, creating jobs and ensuring the product worked for their specific needs. One of those trainees, a young man named Kofi in Ghana, sent me a video of his village lighting up for the first time. Kids were reading by lamplight, a clinic was storing vaccines in a fridge, and families were gathered around a small TV, laughing. Kofi said, "Riley, because of you, our kids can study at night. Our clinic can store vaccines. Our community is stronger now. You've given us a future." I watched that video over and over, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't about the money, it was about the impact. I'd kept my promise to Maria, the single mom from our first test, and to every family like hers. I'd turned my setback into something bigger than I'd ever imagined at GreenWave. Ethan reached out to me in late 2025, as GreenWave was on the brink of collapse. He sent an email. "Riley, I heard about Solarize. It's incredible. I made a mistake. I should have listened to you about our mission. I'm sorry for how I handled things. Can we talk? Maybe partner again? GreenWave isn't doing well, and I think we could do great things together." I read the email and felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, but mostly clarity. Ethan hadn't just ousted me. He'd underestimated me. He thought I'd fade away, that he could take my work and run with it. But I'd built Solarize without him, and I was stronger for it. I didn't need his apology, and I didn't need him in my life. I replied, "Ethan, I appreciate the apology, but I've built Solarize on my own terms. I'm focused on the future, on the families we're helping. I wish you well." I meant it. I didn't hold a grudge. I'd moved on. GreenWave shut down earlier this year, unable to compete without my tech. Their remaining clients switched to Solarize, and Ethan stepped away from the startup world last I heard. I didn't set out to destroy him. I set out to build something better. And I did. Today, Solarize is thriving. We're working on a new version of the solar core that can power entire villages, with a larger battery system and a solar array that can connect multiple units. We've partnered with schools to teach kids about renewable energy, hoping to inspire the next generation of innovators. I've started mentoring other entrepreneurs, especially those in green tech, sharing what I've learned about protecting your work and staying true to your vision. I tell them, always have a backup plan. Trust your instincts but protect your ideas, they're your power. And never let someone else define your worth. I also set up a scholarship fund for rural students who want to study engineering, because I believe the next big idea could come from a kid in a small town just like I was. I named it after my mom, who taught me to never give up, even when I was a kid struggling with math homework. She passed away last year, but I know she'd be proud. I visit her grave sometimes, telling her about Solarize, about the villages we've lit up, the lives we've changed. I like to think she's smiling down on me. I don't talk to Ethan anymore, but I've forgiven him in my own way. Not for his sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger would have kept me stuck, and I've come too far for that. I thought losing Greenwave was the end, but it was just the beginning. That patent wasn't just a piece of paper. It was my second chance, my proof that preparation can outlast betrayal. I turned a $500,000 buyout into a $50 million company. Not because I wanted to win, but because I wanted to make a difference. I showed the world and myself that foresight and resilience can change everything. I'm not done yet. There are still millions of families waiting for light, and I'm going to bring it to them, one solar core at a time. That's the greatest triumph I could ask for.